folks, Mark here again with another update or keeping you up with what's going on over in Western Australia. Obviously our new Firearms Act is still creating a fair bit of carnage around the place. People are sort of working out how to deal with it in getting onto the new system and the portal and all the rest of it and that side of things. There's more and more people waking up to the fact that this is really only the interim phase through this process. There's a lot more aggressive things going to be coming, a lot more firearms confiscations or having to surrender firearms coming as this system actually gets properly into place, but also from that point forward with the laws that are put in place, with the Henry VIII clauses, but with so many things that are going on that they simply will be able to keep going until we get to exactly where the people in the know said it was going to end up, where they take all the guns. The government themselves said, we'll take all your guns. So that is still in progress. And as amazing as it seems, I feel we haven't seen the bad stuff yet. As much as we've seen some bad stuff, we haven't seen the real bad, the core of what this is all going to be about in the not too distant future. And of course that then alludes into what are they actually up to and why would they do that and all those sorts of things. That's not what this conversation is about. This conversation is really what I want to put forward is, how do we fix this? What are people been up to trying to fix it? There's various things that are in play. As I said last week, because the review is finished, the legal actions and the legal planning, the legal structuring can actually start to take place. And I'm not talking to people directly who are doing that, but I've no doubt that is then getting underway in various forms. There is the bigger picture of what potentially could be with the obvious breaches of good governance, where separations of powers have gone, where the commissioner has proven by his own actions that he's not really fit for purpose. His judgments on certain group of people of why they shouldn't have firearms were proven to be inaccurate by the way they behaved when they went and confiscated their firearms. So there's a whole tangle there that moves into implied rights or human rights or all sorts of things. There's all sorts of stuff that's going on, property rights, all sorts of infringements and places where the government has gone way too far, too fast. As for all the things that are involved with that, I don't know. And I'm sort of talking to people. I'm sure there's people, I'm hoping that people reach out with what their thoughts are. But this is for the community to basically feed into, and whether that turns into a High Court challenge or a Supreme Court challenge or whatever it turns into, that's another thing. For the moment, and I suppose the bit that I really wanted to get into specifically now is a way forward for a lot of people. I think a lot of people are overwhelmed by the situation, and they're either simply coping by with a certain amount of duress, but doing what they have to do to try and get to the other side and sort of don't know what else to do. There's some people that don't know what to do because they're trying to fix this problem desperately and there's going to be one foul swoop, one legal action or one protest or one thing that's going to save us and do this sort of stuff. And then overwhelmed by what is that? How can I fix this? How can I fix this sort of thing? There's also still the people that are unfortunately thinking, well, if I comply hard enough, I'll just get used to what these rules are and it'll be fine. And then I can cope like this. And I have to tell for those people, and I hope that they're waking up, that's not the plan that's in place. That's not what's going on. This plan is these laws are not to get you to the place where it seems okay and you'll keep going forward. Once this is locked in, done properly, then essentially they're going to go through and keep pulling the rug or accusing this or doing whatever it is, because they have the power to take all the firearms. All they need is the specific reason for that moment, and they can do that, which may be just the way they're feeling on that day. Ultimately, that is what's been set up. The opinion of the commissioner is everything. So how do you fix that? How do you fight that? It seems overwhelming, it's worse than David against Goliath. The real way, when I've sort of speaking to people and coming up with trying to work with solutions or ways to do things, there's the very obvious thing. If we all stand together, we then become the larger entity, and we then gain some power. And obviously we need to stand together more than just the firearms community. We need to stand together with so many more, whether it's the four-wheel drives, farmers, fishers, but how about just people who care about the future of Western Australia? They're not taking the guns away for no reason. So getting that information out there is very important, building those relationships and becoming more of solidarity against what's actually coming. There is nefarious intent, or however you want to put this, of what's this firearms about, and I do feel there are people waking up to that. There's some things I want to point out in that process. I think there is some solutions. They're not what you might seem, but there is some solutions. There's some things I want to point out which I've been meaning to over the last few weeks and haven't got around to it with talking too much and too much to say, I suppose. One of them is what's been gone all quiet, but is the e-petition that Dave Finney put forward, an e-petition. An e-petition largely, basically asking for a review into the Act, but it was really the main thing about and the formation of it, but the main thing of that e-petition was, can we get the police to stop this action, or the government to do something about stopping things until the full review is complete, which is a pretty practical thought. Of course, the police didn't want to do that, and the government didn't want to do that. But it made sense to stop this stuff, because if the review comes up with something that says, okay, you shouldn't have done those laws, you shouldn't have done those things, you shouldn't have persecuted or prosecuted those people because the reviews actually change things, then it's a pretty simple, pragmatic approach. The answer that came back, and I've forgotten exactly the timing, it was probably a month before it was probably 6 weeks ago, neck of the woods, a month to 6 weeks ago. The answer that came back from the committee that was assigned to dealing with the e-petition was, we're not doing anything because we've got a review. So as Dave himself said to me, it doesn't pass the pub test. You are not going to do anything about halting the prosecutions or the actions on the Act prior to the review because of the review. And if you read between the lines, it was very simple. It's like everything that we know about the situation, the decision's already made. They didn't care what the people had to say at all. This review is simply a song and dance. It's simply theatre to make it appear like they've done something. They knew before the end of this sort of stuff, before they rushly built that book or whatever that bit of theatre was all about, they knew the outcome of things. They weren't going to change anything. This is already written in stone. They weren't going to change things. So it's just another one of the things that if you haven't woken up, you should. They're not acting for the people at all. This is for themselves. This is for or their masters, whatever it is. This is not being done democratically at all, or with any form of good governance. So I wanted to say that it all comes to the same sort of conversation. Well, how do you fix this? What do you do? Unity is what we do to fix this. Now, how do we gain unity? There's various things to do that, and then there's going to be various bits and pieces, whether it's there should be things happening from all over the place. The way to actually deal with the government and do things, there's obviously dealing with, which we've got to do a lot more of, and as a community we haven't done enough of, and that is dealing with the populace, or dealing with the rest of the population, and getting ways to show them that we're not the bad guys. Because they have been convinced by the propaganda, by the mainstream media, by the government, by all the processes in place, they have been convinced that firearms owners are the bad guys. So it's a very easy rock for the government to hide under, or to hide all the ammunition under, to attack us because they've been convinced by that. We have not done the work to fix that. Our sporting groups, our organisations, no one has put a concerted effort into fixing that. So we should be doing that in some form or other. There are all the negative things that are happening via these firearms laws. There's been a little bit of letting the world know, that is, whether it's the conservation side of things, whether it's in a real sense, the human rights side of things, so the people that are getting stood on for this, and the absolute lack of care of your common man that the government's doing. They don't care who they're standing on this sort of stuff to get what they want done. These are things that if put in the right fashion, with the right stories, with the right articles, that sort of stuff, the rest of the population do care about, as long as it's put in the right fashion. If we can put it forward in the right fashion to where it's not just about, oh, they took my guns. No one really cares about the baby that got its lolly stolen. We care about the rest of the details. Generally, it's the story about the other hardships that were caused. It was a story about the situation you're put in, and the guns, the confiscation of the guns, or the demonization of you because of the guns sort of stuff is just this sidestep of the story. But if you look at it deeper than that, you can say, well, listen, that is what happened. The government did the wrong thing. Those are stories. Those are articles that we need to get out there. Whether, like I said, it's about our wildlife that's getting decimated, whether it's about our rights that are being decimated, and combining them with other people's rights. As said too many times, farmers, fishers, the firearms, four-wheel drivers, bushwalkers, you name it, are getting the same pressures, and there needs to be more stuff that ties all that sort of stuff in. So, how do we do all that? What's the process? That's pretty straightforward if you look at that side of it. There's also obviously legal wrangling and political wrangling and lobbying and all sorts of things that are going to matter. I suppose where I want to take it to is where you stop, and I suppose for, like I said, particularly the people that are overwhelmed by how can I possibly fix this? Well, the simple thing is, my thoughts on it, and more I talk to people I'm very much in agreement with, is stop trying to think we can fix it in a foul swoop. Understand this is that we have to think a little more the long game. We have to try and do what we can to limit how far things push when the government has full control, by tactically positioning things, but also work at the long game as to how to get back to this. And I suppose what I'm actually trying to lead into, the main way the government wins is by you being silent. You as an individual, you as an organisation, you as a group, you being silent. There is, I feel, still a certain amount of, if I don't stick my head up at all, if I don't do anything, I'll be fine. That has worked well so far, hasn't it? That's the main tactic that most groups and clubs and things have done. I won't do too much here because if I do, I'll get picked on. Well, that's exactly the tactic that they win with. Your silence is their victory. So that doesn't mean go out in the streets and wave and shout and use a loud hail to say, look at me, I'm standing up for this. And I'm not saying that at all. But doing something is the only way we're going to see light at the end of this tunnel, by doing something. And that means all sorts of things. That means as an individual, you're talking to mates, you're talking to family, and you're working out ways, maybe out of your club, maybe out of a group, you're working out conversations or statements or arguments or ways to put forward your situation and the negatives of this situation without just talking about guns, without just being upset about losing your guns, or arguments for the guns. There are lots of things, and I'm not going to try and spell it all out, but there are conversations. It's what the left does, which is largely what we're fighting. Not completely, but largely what we're fighting. But there's definitely this whole tactic from the institutions and from the left side of our world where they learn phrases, they learn arguments, they learn statements, they learn things to be able to then bludgeon you with their facts, which aren't necessarily facts. But if we do more learning how to explain this sort of stuff, how to put things forward, how to put it forward where guns isn't the issue, good governance is the issue, freedoms are the issue, rights are the issue, our future of our Western Australia is the issue, and guns are just a really good example of it. Those are ways to put things forward. So just learning those conversations. Then the other things that we can be doing, and this is as individuals as well, there's individuals that have contacted me that are doing this sort of thing, getting together an e-petition to fight or to try and push back against some parts of our laws, some parts of the new act, which is, great, individuals doing things. There's realistically, there also should be, as in your group, whether it's your hunting group, whether it's your sporting club, whether it's your sporting organisation, whether it's the SSAA, whether it's whoever it is, ISPC or whatever, I've forgotten the proper term, but whoever it is, as your shooting group, get on to doing something. And stop trying to think you can fix it by yourself or that you have the responsibility of fixing it by yourself. Simply look at the process through the fact of, If you're doing something, you're part of the cure. If you're doing nothing, you're part of the problem. Simple as that. If you're doing nothing, you're basically working for the police. And I know you don't feel that way, but that is how they win. Your silence is their victory. So, say police, obviously I'm talking the hierarchy. I'm not talking about the copper on the beat. I'm talking about the hierarchy, and I'm talking about the police side of our government, which ultimately is our government. So they win by your silence. So how do you fix, what do you do? There's all sorts of things you can do. There is free press, or not free press, but there is press that is not trapped by the mainstream side of things. There is also some of the mainstream stuff with newspapers which will run articles. And the more you do of this sort of stuff, one of the things that I found out a fair while ago was that you get an article in one of the Echo or the Fremantle Herald or and I've forgotten, there's a couple of other ones around the place that are independent media outlets, newspapers. You run some articles in there that start to get a bit of readership, you'll find that the West or the Countryman or those they will start to follow to where those stories are. So that's just one thing. I'm talking articles. But yeah, you get together with getting good stories from your group. You find someone who can write. You find someone there's a good story about, whether it's a farmer and his family that have been put in a bad situation by firearms, or whether it's an area that's getting decimated by the ferals and that because of these problems here, or it's a story of a veteran that's lost his firearms and how much the firearms meant to him. More about how much the firearms meant and the history of this sort of thing to get this positive, or the positive side of the club and what it's doing with a young kid that was suffering from, we've all heard them, was suffering from autism or suffering whatever it was, and coming along and shooting really put them back on the right path. There's literally 1,000 different stories that if we put together, write proper articles and do that as a team, and then get them in. So then your club put something into the Fremantle Herald, or your club got something in the Countryman. But we do this, we don't rely on the heads of the organisation to do this stuff. We do it as clubs, we take it as on projects. Or we have a day where we get people in to actually show some people invite the politicians. Listen, the politicians want your vote. They're coming there so that you give them their vote. It's their constituents. It's whether it's the local mayor or it's the local, some of the media, or it's whatever it is. You get people across into your club. It's, yes, building membership is relevant for the club, but for the community, it's not membership you should be building. It is the actual fact that we're good guys. The guns aren't terrible. They aren't scary, that side of things. Whether it's raising money for lobbying, whether it's raising money for potential legal actions, whether it's starting a legal action, whether it's starting a process or a strategy, whatever it is, your club's into doing something, your group's into doing something. And then go a step past that point. We start networking. You go to a competition over there, and that's what the conversation's about. Guys in gun clubs and competitions, that stuff, want to talk about either their guns or their ammunition or the weekend and the fishing trip or the camping trip or the four-wheel drive or that sort of stuff. You have an issue, you have something to be talking about, to be brainstorming about, to try and fix. Those things are just, that address in Egypt. Denial. If we get onto actually working the problem and start to network and we're doing this is our strategy of doing this, and how'd that go, what sort of feedback you get from it, and that's awesome, so we're going to try and do this. If we start to do that and build a community, build more people into our community, but with all those strategies in mind, then that is, like I said, it's a bit of the long haul. This is months and years in, and it turns into decades if this becomes part of our thing. And to be truthful, if we started this 2 decades ago, we wouldn't be in the position we're in now. But no point crying over spilt milk. But yeah, all the strategies of what we've been doing for the last 20, maybe 50 years haven't gone so well, have they? So yes, it can be changed, but if we look at it as, rather than what is going to fix the problem, just being part of fixing the problem. Take that forward and convince your mates, convince your club, convince your group, convince your association to do that. And don't, when they're talking about association, not trying to talk about the head of them, the hierarchy of the association, to say we should do all this. No, they haven't fixed the problem. They have had the reins. it hasn't got better. So you start to take control of your club, of your part of the organisation, and you start to do that. You keep doing it, get some success, they'll come across, but you have to take that responsibility on. So that's a thought that resonates with most people I talk to. It makes sense as to building the community, getting unity, get that solidarity. That will help. And hopefully, well, not hopefully, absolutely, after doing more of that, we start to be more active like that, under the brackets of, if you are doing nothing, you are doing what the government want. So doing something is what you need to do to survive. So if you do that, we'll come up with better ideas and or strategies that work amongst that as well, by the fact that we've got, as we always say, lots of smart people do this. We got to activate them into a way of thinking about this process, working this problem, and it will grow not only in its power of numbers, but also in the strategy and the brains involved with doing it. As for the other couple of things, another thing in the same vein, well, I suppose the paper that I'm talking about putting together, yes, I'm sort of getting there with, I've sort of got 20 pages so far. There's another, 1,000 to go, but I'm working on it. I'm getting there. I'll have something to share and get peer review and that sort of stuff. I don't know whether it's 2 weeks or it's 2 months. I don't know. It's a long-winded process, but I'm getting there. I'm talking to people about, potential, what potentially can happen, strategy and legal-wise, and trying to find people. And I'd still ask for people who want to do that to talk about that. But another thing that I really do think is important, and maybe I should have said it earlier in the video, but I got contacted by Lady Ruth. And she put forward she's one of those people who's been desperately trying to think of a solution and being a little overwhelmed by the fact of the situation we're in. She's someone who actually has come from another country and has seen this sort of stuff before, in the way of some of these processes, in the way of a government taking control of things that didn't go like it should do. So she's very frustrated and tried and helped with bits and pieces previously. Got a suggestion of, which I think is a great one, of all the submissions, the 2,600 submissions that were sent into the government and basically chucked in a dumpster and set on fire. They didn't want to talk about those. And the assumption would be they already had the answers, they already had the script, so they just wanted to cherry pick the questions and conversations that suited the answers already had. So they didn't need all the, no doubt, very, very, very in-depth, very, very real, very, very genuine complaints, criticisms, suggestions and things and submissions that people put in. So a lot easier just to dismiss them rather than have to talk to them, and then no one gets to see them again. Well, that doesn't need to be the case. Ruth made a suggestion of, and there's an email address below there that you can send that to if you would like to. I think it's a very, very good idea. I think everyone should. If you hopefully have a copy of it, and you can send it in that fashion. If you just know what you said and you haven't, it's all gone. Yeah, listen, rewrite it. Say that's exactly what you did. If you want to be anonymous, so you don't want your name attached to it, you're a little more nervous about that situation, then that's fine too. Whether you just want it there or have a number, have a system where there's a number so you can tell people this is mine, this is this number. Ruth is talking about actually going through and reading through them all and putting all the points and making something as a summary, which is a pretty big thing, to go through what West Australian people thought about things. So that's a mammoth task that she's talking about taking on, but also to put it on whether it's a web page or a website or in some form or other, where ultimately that may turn into a forum. It may turn into a Facebook page. The plan isn't set at this moment by any means. The main place is to make sure we get all that stuff and it's recorded in a place that it can be shared, that it is recorded, so it can be referenced. You can go to it, that side of things, but it turns into where that effort that some people put a lot of effort into and have it just chucked in the bin. Well, it shows very much what this government is running like, very much how much they don't care, but to some degree or another, maybe how much they didn't want people to read what you wrote. So this would be a place to put it forward. So like I said, that email's below to get into there and to send that. If you've got suggestions or you want to help with that sort of stuff, then put it in the comments. Send that in your email to Ruth. That's, however you want to do it. At this moment, she's taking that on. That might turn into something that's bigger than being here and it needs some help with it. But I think it's a really good idea. It's another one of those community building things where we can all see what was actually written. We're all doing the right thing as the government said. Don't share it until it's all reviewed, and then we'll just chuck it in the bin. So disrespectful of their position, disrespectful of the public, and really shows the nature of this government. And I suppose we can do the opposite. We don't need to diss them or whatever the modern term is for pick on them sort of stuff. We need to hold them into account, but we need to do that in a honourable, honest, legal fashion where we can actually show this, but we also need to support all the individuals. So I think it's a great idea. Email below, send them in. It's something as to how we use it, that sort of stuff. It will turn it into something where it's listening to people's suggestions as well, but make sure it is something that is prim and proper, fit for purpose, and actually shows what those people actually had to say. And I would also suggest, if you've got, it probably turns into you didn't put in a submission because of whatever reason. And that may be the people who are still trapped into the thought that if I say something, I'll get picked on. You're going to get picked on anyway. Your silence is one of the main tools that they'll use. Being noisy. If you're rude, inappropriate, that sort of stuff, that's not appropriate. I don't know if it puts you more in the crosshairs or not, but it's not appropriate. But if you're talking about the civil wars and world domination or all that sort of stuff, once again, you're probably, you're saying other things about yourself. But to actually say what was wrong and put forward suggestions or just simply point out how inappropriate this is, there's nothing wrong with that. That is the system we live in. And as I said, your silence, you're doing nothing, is the thing that makes you the weakest. So in that score, this gets as a community thing, and that makes us the strongest. Being together, being all part of this, makes us stronger. We all can look out for each other to some degree. Anyway, that's enough of the suggestions and telling people what to do. I think they're very valuable things. Working out how to do something in whatever form that is really important. Being part of getting your community or your group to be active in some form, in a small way or a large way, raising funds, writing articles, getting people into your club, whatever it is, doing something, but also sharing it with our community so we start to all encourage Archie, lead by example, and encourage each other by example. I think very, very valuable thing, and in all honesty, it is the way that we come to the other side of this. It is the way that we cure it. Can't tell how long that will take, but I can tell you the more effort we put into it, the more likelihood of success. Anyway, guys, that's it for today. Enough of me banging on again. Thank you very much for checking in. We'll catch you next time.